So when I was young, I don't remember ever being offered cocaine. But I do remember thinking, I'm not going to try it because I'm afraid that I might become a drug addict. So I had that kind of real visceral fear of trying drugs because I knew I had an addictive personality because I was already addicted to the world's most popular, socially acceptable, friendly, cheapest drug on the planet, sugar. So today's video, we're talking about 11 reasons it's actually easier to give up cocaine than it is to give up sugar. Now, that might be a little bit controversial, but bear with me, look at the reasons, and wait to draw a conclusion until the end of this video. Reason number 1. We have brain scans that show that refined sugar lights up the brain's dopamine receptors 8 times more than cocaine. Now, some people will go and draw the conclusion that that means that cocaine is 8 times more addictive than sugar. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but what we do know is that in certain parts of the dopamine receptors, it's lighting up the brain 8 times more than cocaine. So that is showing us that sugar is highly, highly addictive. Reason number 2, and this one is pretty big, is that it's a lot cheaper to buy sugar than it is to buy cocaine. So unless you're independently wealthy, you can afford a lot more sugar regularly than you can afford cocaine. And we definitely know that the price of something does impact it. So a gram of sugar probably won't even cost you a penny. A gram of cocaine will cost you $60 to $80 depending where you are in the world and the market. And the average cocaine addict, their habit is anywhere from $600 to $2,000 a day. Now you can buy a lot of sugar with that. In fact, some people wouldn't consume that much sugar in a year. But just the price alone makes it easier to give up cocaine than it does sugar. Reason number 3, sugar is everywhere and almost everyone is your dealer. Grandma's your dealer, grandpa's your dealer. Mom and dad are your dealer. Your sisters, aunts, and uncles, your pastor at your church, the nurse in the hospital, the nun at your church, or whoever it is. We've become so socialized to have sugar that it's not only everywhere, but everyone is your dealer. In fact, I've gone to a bank to make a bank transaction, and there's sugar there in the form of candies to raise money for the breast cancer research, which is crazy. We know that sugar feeds cancer. It's definitely linked to it. And here it is in the bank. So literally, you can almost find it everywhere, and it's incredibly hard to avoid. Whereas cocaine, you have to go looking for it. It's not that easy to find, and it's not in everything. It's not in your soups. It's not in your freezer section. Well, I guess some freezers, that's where some people might put their cocaine. But by and large, it's not in the supermarket. It's not easy to find. And that is the number 3 reason why cocaine is easier to give up than sugar. Number 4, cocaine is illegal and sugar is legal everywhere in the world. Okay, so we know that if something is legal and readily available, the resistance to actually giving it up is less. So if you have the barrier of having to commit an illegal act, it's going to reduce your consumption. At the very least, I can imagine if sugar was illegal, it might, we might still be able to find it, but it's not going to be easy to access, and that will impact your ability to give it up. Number 5, billions of dollars are spent globally to seduce you to eat sugar, whereas I think the advertising budget for cocaine is pretty much zero. It's very much a network marketing kind of thing, so they're not actually spending a lot on ads. And that means that if you're trying to give up sugar and you see ads everywhere, it makes it much harder to give up. Whereas if you're trying to give up cocaine, no ads means very little reminders in that respect. Number 6. Sugar crosses every boundary. It's in foods, it's in drinks, it's in sweet things, it's in savory things. It's in things that you never ever would expect it to be in. The other day I was at a tea party and a friend offered me some herbal teas, and she had a selection, and she knows that I'm the Sweet Freedom gal, and she said, oh, but you don't want those 2 teas because they contain sugar in it. So a very popular brand here in British Columbia and Canada, which has beautiful packaging, beautiful tubes, all this kind of thing. And I couldn't believe it. I looked at the tubes, and the tea actually had sugar in it, a herbal tea, which is crazy, okay? Now it's in savory foods. It's in things you never ever would expect it. Beef jerky. I picked up a beef jerky in the United States that literally 33% of the serve was sugar, okay? So if you think about it, cocaine is not everywhere. It's not in your food, so it's not in your supermarket. It's not exposed to you 3, 4, and 5 times a day. It's not at your coffee place that I know of, okay? So just that exposure and the fact that it's in all of those things, and you have to look out for it. In fact, I bought a beautiful kombucha that is really a brand that I totally respect. But in the ingredient list, according to the old labeling laws, they were allowed to say it had no sugar in it because that the sugar was converted in the fermentation process, even though there's 12 grams of sugar in a bottle. So it's kind of crazy how the labeling goes, and it makes it really hard to avoid and give up because of that. Number 7, it's socially acceptable. This is something that we do as a way of showing love. So many people bake and give things as an act of love. Grandparents are constantly doing this, and parents are screaming at me saying, how do I get my parents to stop feeding my kids sugar? Because they can't see anything wrong with it. It's socially acceptable, and they think the parents are being unreasonable. Everywhere you go, it's socially acceptable to have sugar. It's actually hard to find a circumstance, except maybe at a Sweet Freedom live event, where sugar's not acceptable. So also, as far as sugar being socially acceptable, think about cocaine as being socially acceptable. Think about, oh, I'm just going to have a little bit for breakfast and then go off to school, right? Or just give the kids a little cocaine. You know, it's, oh, you're making a big fuss. It's not that bad for them. At a party, let's just have a little bit of cocaine at the kids' party. That's not what happens, okay? So it's definitely, if you were offering that around, you would have some frowning faces, whereas if you're offering sugar, you have the opposite, happy, glowing faces. Ooh, we'll collude with you. So that brings me to point 8, and point 8 is that it's socially unacceptable to say no to sugar. So not only is it acceptable to have it, there's almost like this kind of unwritten word that if you're saying no to sugar, you're like a downer, you know, to the party. You're the party pooper. Oh, what, you're having sugar? It also brings up people's, you know, kind of reactions as far as collusion goes, because now you're not having the drug with them. It mirrors up the fact that they're having the drug and they feel kind of bad. And so sometimes they can even pressure you to have sugar even when you said no. And we know this because many of the people going through the Sweet Freedom program have actually experienced that, where people have actually made them feel bad for saying no to sugar. And if you think about it with cocaine, it's not a problem. In most circumstances, I don't know about the circles you're running in, but for most of us, it's socially unacceptable to offer cocaine to someone, and there's certainly not a big problem in the world if you say no to cocaine that people will frown on you. Of course, it depends on your social circles. So point 9 is cocaine is much more of a head addiction. So it happens, we know, in the brain. That's kind of the primary driver for the addiction. With sugar, we definitely have the brain piece that's addictive, we know that, but it also is in our gut, the microflora. Actually, when you have too much sugar going into your body, it creates things like candida overgrowth and what we call the not so healthy microorganisms in the gut will actually start to create craving impulses to feed the monster that's actually growing and creating it. So you kind of have two zones of addiction where it's going on, whereas cocaine, it's more so in the brain. So reason 10 is that most kids are exposed to refined sugar in vitro. In fact, they've shown that when the mother has sugar and they've done ultrasounds of the baby, as the sugar hits the baby's system, they smile. Okay, so we're exposed when our mother has refined sugar, we're eating refined sugar. And many, if not millions of people each year are fed refined sugar in their baby formula. And people are often, you know, slipping little bits of refined sugar into little treats for babies. So it's kind of crazy that it's so available. Whereas children are not necessarily exposed to cocaine in vitro, or their first taste out of the womb doesn't actually have refined sugar in it, unlike the formula babies, and it's certainly not socially acceptable to give babies cocaine, okay? So even if a child is born to a mother who's a cocaine addict, they're treated for drug addiction, whereas if a child is born to a mother that's had tons of refined sugar, it's never ever addressed. Reason 11, and this is pretty much why we're making this video, is when someone has cocaine in their body and they're addicted to it, it's treated very seriously. There are treatment centers, there's campaigns, and most doctors would actually take that very seriously. When someone's addicted to sugar, it's not taken anywhere near as serious, and the resources out there treat it as a diet issue, not an addiction issue. Refined sugar is made like a drug. It has a drug-like effect in the body, and because it is a drug, it requires a strategy, not a diet, in order to give it up. Okay, so what am I saying? Am I suggesting that we all switch our sugar habit for a cocaine habit? Absolutely not. It's way too expensive. That's not the reason why, okay? That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that sugar is a drug and we need to start to treat it and take it very seriously. So here's some statistics that might help you understand this. In 2008, if you just take 3 of the diseases that are directly related to sugar consumption, and remember, Sweet Freedom, we talk about over 144 conditions and diseases directly related to sugar consumption. So if you just take obesity, heart disease, and diabetes, if you look at the statistics for 2008, there was over 38 million deaths related to that. Contrast that to 2016, where the figures show that there were over 10,000 deaths related to cocaine use. You start to get a picture of, man, this is really serious, that we have way more deaths related to sugar consumption, and yet when we actually think about cocaine, we think it's such a terrible thing. Well, I'm here to tell you that we need to have a completely different look at our view about sugar and how addictive it is and the destruction that it's creating. I have a student named Shelley who saw the Sweet Freedom program, and I was talking about this issue, and she was a former cocaine addict and is now struggling with a sugar addiction, and she says absolutely it's much harder to give up sugar than it was for her to give up cocaine. So if you're struggling with sugar addiction, or someone you care about is struggling with sugar addiction, please know we're here to help. We have tons of resources on the website, recipes, and free videos on our YouTube channel, which we would love for you to access. Because sugar is a drug, a diet's not going to work, and you need a strategy. And just know that at Sweet Freedom, we've created a 7-day Eat Less Sugar challenge. So if you think it's absolutely impossible to give up, it's one of the best and easy and quickest steps to help you realize that it's entirely possible. And for those of you who know you need some help, we have the 8-week online program that there are people going through it now who thought giving up sugar was absolutely impossible and are doing it successfully, unlike any other time in their life. So we know that having support and community and a strategy will help you get off of sugar and obtain sweet freedom. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with people you care about that can benefit from this, and join our incredibly supportive Facebook group. And lastly, if you're looking to get sugar-free naturally, follow the links below and find out more about the Sweet Freedom online program.